The America First Legal Foundation combating the left's radical agenda.
Fight for the American people, defend the Constitution, and save this nation for the next generation. Welcome to the next episode of The Arena with America First Legal. I'm Gene Hamilton, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Ian Pryor, Alexa Vance, and Julie Strauss. Today, we're going to dive into a bunch of different issues, but I want to get started with what's going to be a fairly lengthy segment and actually will be our bad legal take.
From viral bad arguments to headline mistakes, we're calling them out on bad legal takes.
All right, now our bad legal take of the week, or actually of the last month, maybe the last year, maybe the last decade. I don't know what y'all think, but we're talking about the Virginia Supreme Court. And not only about not specifically what the Virginia Supreme Court did, which was actually a good legal take, followed the law. The bad legal take that we're going to discuss this week relates to what happened in the aftermath at the Quality Learning Center that's otherwise known as the Virginia Attorney General's office. So Ian Pryor, what you got, man? What do you think? What is your reaction to what the Virginia Supreme Court did and kind of what you've seen in the aftermath? And I think for the folks at home, just understand the Virginia Supreme Court issued a decision that said that the legislation that was adopted that related to redistricting, and if you've seen the maps, including the crazy little lobster guy, looking district, that was going to change the outcome to a 10-1 map, basically, for Democrats in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That the Democrats didn't follow the Virginia Constitution and Virginia statutes, and so in the way that they did this setup and set things up. So it was actually a procedural victory, which Democrats claim to usually be in favor of. Oh yeah, we followed the process, due process. This is great. But since the decision, because it didn't give them the results that they wanted, what do you think?
Well, you really have to back up a little bit to fully understand what happened here. So you go back to 2020, and Virginia Democrats, led by Governor Ralph Northam, also known in some quarters as Governor Blackface, had a Senate majority of Democrats and a Senate majority in the House of Delegates. And they amended the Constitution, as they should. They did it properly then, right? What they did was they created an independent redistricting commission, and they passed it in one session of the House of Delegates, and then they had an election and passed it during another session. Then the people voted on that, and they voted overwhelmingly for this independent redistricting. It was like 65% voted for it. Fast forward to 2025, and Democrats don't like that anymore. No, they're having buyer's remorse on this independent commission. And so they want to change the Constitution again. Well, to change the Constitution, you have to, one, pass what it is that you're changing in the legislature, right? You do that step one. Then an intervening election occurs, and then you have to pass it after the intervening election occurs. And then the question goes to the voters on the ballot. In this case, they voted for this referendum in the House of Delegates and the Virginia Senate on October 31st, 2025, after I don't know how many million people had already voted early. Early voting had been going on for 41 days, right? So the argument was that, well, look, there was no intervening election. This was during the election. And that's what the court said. The court said you didn't do it right. If you want to amend the Constitution, there are checks and balances in place for you to amend the Constitution. This is not just like passing a law. This is amending the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and they did not do it right. So we get the decision, and I mean, just the Democrats after that. First of all, you've got Jay Jones, who comes out with a statement blasting the majority on the Virginia Supreme Court.
Well,
Now,
hold on, careful. You used a word there. I don't know if that was ironically or unironically.
That was actually unironically, but that's good. Yeah, Jay Jones, who
Attorney General.
Right. Everyone remembers Jay Jones, and he fantasized about, the former Republican Speaker of the Virginia House of Delegates getting 2 bullets to the head and his children dying in their arms. Well, this guy basically accused the Supreme Court majority here in Virginia of manipulating language to achieve their agenda, and that they were part of some right-wing establishment that didn't care about the law. I'm summarizing. I mean, first of all, the rules of professional conduct say you're not to attack the integrity of judges. That sounds like an attack on the integrity of judges. But then, making matters worse, and this is just so funny, they indicated they were going to file to the United States Supreme Court. Don't know why, because this is a state issue, state constitution, state court. But in the motion to stay the decision that they sent to the Supreme Court, that they filed to the Supreme Court, Attorney General Jones's office misspelled Virginia, calling it Virgnia, and then they misspelled senator, calling it senator.
But he also didn't know how to spell attorney general.
Yeah, that was like the first week of office. Attorney General. And I believe he also sent out an attorney general opinion on former attorney general Jason Miyares' letterhead. In the first week of office.
How embarrassing.
So what a joke.
Going back to what you said earlier, over 1.3 million people had already voted before. So it was a total, like, who cares what you have to say? For that, they voted early, so they didn't get the opportunity to have their voices heard, right? And then the legislature acted. I mean, it was insulting. It was crazy. And the Supreme Court said, no, that doesn't count. And then what else did the Supreme Court say? You got to remember, the Commonwealth said, we want you to stay this case, court, because we need the referendum to happen. We need to hear people speak, and then you could decide the case, right? So they sought a stay. The court gave them a stay. They didn't like what happened when the court issued a decision, and the court said, you don't get to do that. On the one hand, you want us to stay the case, and then you complain that we stayed the case. So which is it? And of course, all these Democrats on Capitol Hill are going crazy. What did Jeffrey say?
Yeah, well, first they gambled, right? They moved to stay the lower court decision that enjoined the referendum vote from happening, right? Because they thought, and they won on that. They thought that if the referendum happened and they won, that the Supreme Court of Virginia would say, well, I mean, the people chose.
Yeah, we don't want peer pressure.
There's too much pressure on us.
Exactly.
But they didn't. They followed the law. So yeah, so this first comes from on Saturday, I saw a post, and I don't have the guy's name on hand, but there's a professor, a law professor, they, them, theirs are his pronouns, so we need to get that right. And they, them, theirs suggested that we could lower the retirement age for the Supreme Court justices to 54, which would result in all the Supreme Court justices being forced off the bench, and they could reappoint 7 new Supreme Court justices who will then allow this to go through. Sounds crazy, but then the New York Times reported that this was actually discussed in a meeting with Hakeem Jeffries and Virginia's Democrat congressional delegation. So much so that the representative for the 10th district, which covers Loudoun County, Suhas Subramanian, he said, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Great idea. Great idea. And so, and here's a good quote from Ted Lieu of California. Like, they have enough problems in California. You'd think, like, mind your own shop. He says, what this Virginia Supreme Court did was not only wrong, it was disgraceful. They basically said, hey, Virginia, spend all this taxpayer money holding election, do all this stuff, and oh, by the way, just kidding, that election didn't count. This is how they talk.
Yeah, I mean, it's so silly. I mean, it's just ridiculous at the end of the day when you think about it, because as a group of people, when you adopt a constitution that's going to govern the way that your government conducts itself, in the rights and responsibilities in between the government and the people, you would expect then that people would generally want those procedures in that constitution to be followed, right? To be actually followed and adhered to, and not skip over steps to achieve political objectives. That's been the settled expectation, I think, amongst Americans almost uniquely throughout history, that, look, we've got rules, we've got a constitution, we're going to abide by it. We might not like the outcome, but we're at least going to adhere to the values that are in the constitution or the stated principles or the stated rules or amendments, whatever the case may actually be. But then when you have somebody, prominent Democrat, come out and say, "Oh, well, this democratic process was overturned by the Virginia Supreme Court," like some kind of radical activist. I mean, you think throughout history, there's 20,000 different examples that you could point to where the proverbial toothpaste was out of the tube, where taxpayer money had already been expended on something, but where it was illegal, it was wrong, and it had to be stopped, and a court had to step in. So, it's just so rich to hear that type of rhetoric coming from a Democrat, especially when they're the ones who, at least throughout my lifetime, have tended to be the ones to talk about, oh, we need fairness and we need procedural fairness and we need all this other stuff. And that's just doesn't appear to be the case. They just want an outcome.
Look,
all they want is an outcome.
You're 100% right. And the Constitution works for them when they want it to work for them, right? And there's this really good conversation in the decision where the court talks about the Constitution and the fidelity of the Constitution. And if you think back in history, I think it's fair to say as a generality that it's the Democrats who basically, they use the Constitution when it's good for them, and then they toss it away, right? Wilson's like, it's a living, breathing document. Like, we can change it now. It's not the document, it's not the document of old. The Declaration of Independence was about, getting away from the king. Well, no, it also discusses people's inalienable rights. Like, it's a little bit more involved than that. And this is the pattern of the left. And thank God the Supreme Court of Virginia didn't buy in.
And it goes to something bigger too, which is, we keep hearing all this talk about our democracy. Okay, we are not a democracy. A democracy is you get a bunch of people in a room, they vote, that's the law, the end, right? The Constitution is designed to, at times, thwart the will of the people, right? If you're to have legislation that says, you can't say bad things about, your member of Congress. Well, that's clearly, and they vote for it. Okay, well, I guess that's the will of the people. But the Constitution says, no. See, we have the First Amendment, and you can't do that. That's why the Constitution is so important. And that's why in a situation like this, where people may say, yeah, but we voted for it. But that's not the system of government that we live in. We live in a system of government where we have votes and we have legislation, but we also have an independent judiciary that relies on the Constitution to guard against what the founders talked about as the tyranny of the majority. It's mind-boggling listening to these leaders who should know their basic civics. Forget about that.
Well, they can't spell, so
They
we
can't
didn't
spell.
Yeah.
But it seems like they're rudderless and they're just grasping at straws. It's like they get swatted down and they immediately go to the nuclear option. Well, let's just take out the whole Virginia Supreme Court. Let's replace every single one of them, even the ones that agreed with us. Because there were 3 that agreed with them, right? It was a 4-3 decision. And so I think it's emblematic of the Democrat Party, the whole Democrat Party today, really.
And it's scary if you think about, let's say in 2028, they win the White House, they win the Senate, they win the House of Representatives, abolish the filibuster, pass all kinds of legislation, pack the Supreme Court, grant Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. statehood. Then where are we?
Right.
Then we study what West Virginia did to get away from Virginia.
Yeah, well, I mean, it may come to that. And, I've at least looked at my particular family trees, both sides of my family. And I know that I can trace both sides of my family back in the Commonwealth of Virginia for hundreds
Oh,
of
that's
years.
crazy.
Right? I mean, the hundreds of years ago that they were settled. I can go see old family grave sites and see the names on the tombstones and things. And wow, it's actually real. And so I think about the sacrifices that people like them made, people like the George Washingtons of our founding fathers made, and you think about just how far the Commonwealth of Virginia has fallen, right? Just generally speaking, across the board, from being kind of this epicenter of individual liberty and just kind of Americana, the intellectual hub of really, I mean, I know Philadelphia, and I know New York, but really kind of rooted in the intellectual and kind of cultural hub of the original 13 colonies. I think I might be biased, but Virginia had a really special place and played a really special role throughout all of American history. And then when you see what its leadership looks like now, in what they're trying to do and what national leadership is supporting at the state level, it's crazy. And it's just really sad to think just how far things have fallen. But we can even drill down at the micro level in the Commonwealth. Now, it's not the whole Commonwealth, right? I mean, we know if you drive throughout the state, if you drive, you see Trump signs
You
everywhere.
don't have to drive that far out.
Not that
It's
far
so
out.
wag the dog with Northern Virginia. It's unbelievable.
Exactly. Loudoun County, Fairfax County, just, I mean, insane how much life has changed over the last 20 years for residents of those two counties, especially in the school districts. But you just think about the insanity at the state level, and then what we're seeing at the state level is actually not even that crazy compared to what we're seeing at the local school system level.
Oh,
Yeah, and
Loudoun
that
County.
sort of brings us once again to Loudoun County, where all things crazy just seem to percolate at all times. So with the newest story is that there was a student, a male who identifies as a female, that recorded over 40 other students using the bathroom over a 3-year span, right?
Oh my,
That's insane.
40.
And first of all, now he was recording boys. So this is a boy that thinks he's a girl that was in the boys' bathroom recording boys. Now, what does the school system say? They came out and said, well, you know, there's been a lot of misinformation. This doesn't involve a student using the bathroom of not their biological sex, so our policies aren't implicated. The fact that he had to say that
Right.
shows just how messed up this school system is. Now, think about it for a second. Like, 40 people. Are we to believe that
3 years.
it's just the 41st person was the first one to say anything?
Right.
Probably not.
And nobody else knew.
Right?
Amazing.
Now, what I'm concerned with, and what people should be concerned with, is Loudoun County Public Schools, you know, students have rights. And if you say you're transgender, you get super rights, right? So back in 2021, we had a sexual assault in Stonebridge, at Stonebridge High School in Loudoun County. Everybody knows about this. They arrested the dad at the school board meeting. The kid wore a skirt. According to sworn testimony, he said he was gender expansive, right? Well, they didn't do a Title IX on him. They didn't do a Title IX investigation. They just quietly transferred him to another school where he committed a second sexual assault. In one of our cases, we have boys that were in a locker room saying they were uncomfortable with a girl who claimed to be a boy being in their locker room. They launched a Title IX investigation against them when they file a Title IX complaint against the girl for, guess what, recording the boys in the locker room, including some of whom, you know, said they were using the bathroom. They dismissed the Title IX complaint. So when you look at a school system like that, you say to yourself, what's really going on here? Is it just, hey, this kid says he's trans, so, you know, hands off, they get the run of show?
It's so, and Ian and I were talking about this earlier. Where does this come from? Like, how can you have this psychology that's accepted? We were talking, Spanberger has 3 girls. And when she's asked about this whole issue, how can you not care? Like, don't you care about the safety of your daughters? Or don't you care about them wanting to go to the soccer tournament and then, like, maybe they're going to lose because there's a guy who thinks he's a girl and wants to play on the girl? Like, the whole thing. It is so illogical. And Loudoun County, again and again and again. Finally, I think, though, tell me if I'm wrong, parents are, like, finally getting with the program and going to school board meetings and being a little braver. But as brave as they get, it's like the school board just doubles down.
They double down. And I mean, think about it when you're talking about this commitment to this trans ideology from places like Loudoun County. You know, Loudoun County Public Schools, their enrollment is going down. They're facing budget shortfalls. Meanwhile, the Department of Education, after we sent a letter to the Department of Education saying, investigate that school system for its policies allowing boys into girls' room because that's a violation of Title IX. Department of Education did an investigation. They found that they were in violation of Title IX, and they put them on high risk status, right? So that their federal funding may very well be impacted and may be cut off, but they're still willing to go down this road.
And why? I mean, first of all,
That's a good question.
it's not their money, right? It's like the tax. So it's this like, it's somebody else's money that is being taken away. I think that's part of it, maybe. What else can explain it? I mean, it's certainly like there's no common sense whatsoever that can drive this. None.
It seems to me, I mean, what you said is so true. Super rights. They're taking one group of people and they're elevating the rights of that group over the rights of everybody else. And
But there's
that's
so
really what
few
it
of
is.
them. That's what I don't get.
and
Like, there's so
why?
few of them,
Yeah,
Alyssa. Why are they doing it?
Yeah,
I
well,
hear
it's
out of
crazy.
for fans of Beverly Hills Cop, I hear Axel Foley saying super rights, like with the
Yes.
super cops. You guys messed up the super cop story.
Superfly.
It's super rights.
Yeah.
You know, whatever the right to free speech. Well, if it makes a kid that says he's trans feel bad, then you don't have the right to free speech. Your religious beliefs. Oh, well, if it conflicts with the rights of a kid that says he's trans to use a girl's locker room, well, too bad for your religion, right? Or too bad for your privacy. These rights are all being subjugated to the rights of, a few kids. And look, nobody's saying to discriminate against somebody because they believe they're something that they're not, right? Nobody's saying, well, this kid, because he says he's a girl, and for that reason alone, a teacher gave him a bad grade. Okay, that's discrimination. You shouldn't do that. But what we're talking about here is not anti-discrimination policies. These are policies that are utterly insane that, 40,000 years of human history would contradict.
Mhm.
And they keep doubling down. And somebody else is going to get hurt. Just 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, they had this 19-year-old substitute trans teacher
Oh, yeah.
at Loudoun County
That's
Public Schools.
crazy.
Like, why do you think they hired him? Was it because of his immense experience educating children? He's 19 years old. They hired him because they want to be a safe and welcoming and affirming place for trans people. That's why.
And to your point, Virginia is the state where the religious, it's either called like the Religious Freedom Act or Religious Restoration, I can't remember. The federal, the First Amendment was based upon the statute that was, it was
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson.
Right.
So like it's so appalling.
Well, it is appalling, and it's also just the kind of thing that makes you realize how easy and how quickly places can change if you don't have people who are willing to stand up and say no. Parents who are willing to stand up and say no at a school board meeting. Individuals willing to stand up and say no to elected officials for all kinds of other things. You think about Virginia, just think about how much it has shifted over such a short period of time from being a place, Loudoun County in particular, that used to be reliably red in its patterns and culture to now being the epicenter of insanity in the entire state, dare I say the entire East Coast. It is amongst the leaders of insane policies, especially in the school system. It should tell people at home, look, if you see some of the stuff start bubbling up, don't wait, right? Don't wait. Don't wait for and assume that someone else is going to come save the day.
Right.
There's great organizations. There's organizations like ours that'll try to step in and try to help, but just don't wait. Use your circles of influence. Try to stop the spread of this insanity. And Julie, your point about it being contrary to common sense, I think is something that should resonate with folks at home. Look, you see a thing, if you have kids and some boy is wanting to go in the girl's bathroom, there's a part of you, I don't care how kind of infected with the woke mind virus you are, there's a part of you that says, this is not right.
Yeah.
It's just
something's-
not.
It
That's
doesn't
just-
fit.
It doesn't make sense. That there's surely something can be done. And I think that there are lots of things that can be done based on federal and state law, depending on where you're located. And we've touched on a lot of those areas of law in prior episodes and also on our website. Just as a reminder to everybody at home, aflegal.org, our Parent and Student Action Center, has a lot of forms and guides and things that you can use if you are in a circumstance where your child's rights are being violated. We're not saying it as a self-promotional thing. It is a free resource for you to be able to use. We hope that you do use it because these things are actually crazy and they need to be stopped.
And it's
And
gonna
there's
have
just
a
not enough people to do it.
Sorry, it's going to have a domino effect, right?
Yeah.
If you speak up,
Right.
then your friend may speak up. But people staying silent, that's as infectious in a bad way as speaking up is positive, right? Look, there's so many examples you're talking, and I'm even thinking it's different, but there's an overlap. There's a case in New Jersey where the attorney general had requested information from a pro-life center. They wanted all the donor information, the names, how much they donated, the addresses from this clinic. And they issued a subpoena, and the clinic's like, no, we're not going to give you that information because we need to protect those who are donating. And it went all the way up, and the court said, no, that's a freedom of assembly, a freedom of speech issue. And so, and by the way, this is well settled law by now. So you'd think that the attorney general, I guess maybe this attorney general is related to like Mr. Virginia J. Jones or something, the nerve to even issue a subpoena on something that has been so well settled that you don't get this information, because giving to an organization, as I said, is a form of free speech. I support this organization, pro-life, whatever. Therefore, I'm going to give, and I want to do it anonymously, and I want to be able to rely on that. And when a state says, "Oh, we're not gonna release your information," that's about as reliable as what happened during the Biden administration, where they just like
Right.
totally gave away the store on giving out information.
Well, speaking of subpoenas and kind of finishing up on the Loudon thing, it was interesting yesterday, what day after this story broke, that the superintendent of Loudoun County Public Schools, Aaron Spence, who, I mean, every picture I've seen of this guy, it looks like he's like on a 3-day bender, but he's hopefully,
What does that mean
hopefully
exactly?
he doesn't do the 3-day bender before he has to testify before the House and Education Workforce Committee on June 10th, along with the superintendents of Chicago Public Schools and San Francisco Public Schools. It's going to be interesting. He put out a statement yesterday saying, he looks forward to sharing all the great work that Loudoun County Public Schools has done. Like, yeah, that's not how that's going to go, buddy.
Yeah, no,
I'll
that's
tell
not.
you right now, it's not how it's going to go.
Too bad Fairfax County superintendent got left out of that party.
Yeah, I guess who's making the news right now? Let's pick that one.
Yeah, well, there's so many to choose from, right?
Yeah. Well, so one of the things that actually I know that the House is looking into related to Northern Virginia, but it's an issue that comes across the entire country, is the issue of these woke DAs, Soros DAs in their prosecution policies. And as a country, we've gotten to this place where people have campaigned on rhetorically appealing to a liberal base messages about restorative justice, in needing to defend the rights and individual liberties of people, especially the accused, and all these other things. And they dress and cloak language and things that were important to the founders, right? In making sure that individual has rights, due process rights, that you have a right to a jury trial, you have a right to counsel, to defend yourself, all kinds of different things that you have, but that they use to ensure that the most vicious people in America are released onto the streets time and again in free pending trial to reoffend, all under the guise of criminal justice reform, all under the guise of, and like, look, there are crimes, there have been crimes at the federal and at the state level where the sentence seems disproportionate to the offense conducted. I think a lot of people can think about a lot of those types of offenses, especially in the white collar world in particular. But as a country, especially when it comes to violent crime and public safety risks, you have prosecutors across this country and judges who have been releasing people onto the streets of the United States who were just arrested, picked up, charged with murdering somebody or assaulting some woman or something along those lines, and you see the same headlines all the time and again, time and again. It's the same person who's been arrested 30, 40, 50 times, released. And yet you have these prosecutors and you have these folks who just go along with it. They just, well, you know, I mean, they're going to get their day in court. They're going to get their time. And the thing is, as a society, we used to recognize that if you have been charged or convicted or you're charged with doing violent offenses in the United States, you're charged with smacking somebody in the face multiple times, chances are you're going to do it again. And statistically speaking, if you look at who commits crimes in the United States, it's the small group of repeat offenders, right? The small group of repeat offenders from all different demographic backgrounds of all kinds are the people who offend and commit most of the offenses in the United States. So if you want to reduce crime in the United States, I would think that we would do something akin. And I know the libertarians and the left, they're gonna try to clip this and try to trip me up or something, but akin to what Bukele did in El Salvador, which is you put your violent criminals in jail. They do time in jail. They don't get released on the streets. If you murder somebody, you go to jail. If you rape somebody, you go to jail. If you commit a violent offense, you go to jail. And the problem is that these Soros DAs across the country have been refusing to prosecute people. They've been going along with releasing them. And if you're an illegal alien, my God.
Super rights.
Kind of like with the trans kids, right? I mean, it's just, oh, well, you know, here, and I can just tell you based off personal experience, here's what happens. Get charged with an offense. Maybe it's, police show up, illegal alien has beat his wife. And so he gets charged with family violence battery, right? And so it's an offense that could be punishable by years in prison. But it gets to the prosecutor's desk. The prosecutor says, oh, well, this is an illegal alien. Well, that's going to have immigration consequences for them because that's going to be considered to be an aggravated felony under the immigration laws, which means he's not eligible for any relief. And so let's plea this down, or let's like charge this thing down. So we're going to offer you a charge to disorderly conduct, and then you're going to plead a disorderly conduct, and you're going to get time served. And then this is all under the guise of fairness, right? That, oh, we don't want, God forbid, there's an immigration consequence to you, right? God forbid that you get deported from the United States because you were picked up for committing this criminal offense. The person gets released. They get treated better than a citizen. So if there's a citizen who beats his wife, guess what? That person should go to jail. And they should go to jail for as long as the local prosecutor is able to, you know, convince the judge is warranted by the facts and circumstances. If you're an illegal alien, you should go to jail, not only for just as long, but potentially longer, right? If you want to fix a society, and if you want people to feel safe when they walk out on the streets, you should think that the people who have no right to be here are the ones who are going to get prosecuted the most, do the most jail time, and then get deported when they're done. Like that's a sequence that would make sense. But in places like Fairfax County, there's prosecutors like Steve Descano and others, and this is present in jurisdictions all across the country, where, oh God, you're an illegal alien? Well, we don't want you to get deported. We're not going to let you get deported for any of this stuff. We feel so bad. God, you know, forgive us for arresting you, sir. Please forgive our sins for arresting you for committing an offense on our soil. So what do y'all think when it comes to Descano, when it comes to Fairfax, when it comes to any of these issues that I've just raised in this way too long rambling statement? I'm very passionate about this. I mean, it's I just don't understand how we got here.
First of all, we need you sitting on the dais because Descano is going to be sitting, I guess, in House Judiciary for a hearing, which unfortunately will be a little too solicitous, I think, for all our flavor. But every single thing you said is, again, there's like this common theme with everything we do at AFL and everything we've talked about this morning. Common sense. It defies all sense of justice and common sense that there are the Ian Pryor super rights. I think we need a bumper sticker. What do you think? Let's get super rights.
This would be like a little cartoony sticker that just pops up anytime on these shows now.
You got super rights. What were you going to say?
Yeah, well, I mean, Descano on his website, on his campaign website, and we've talked about this before, but he said that it's not fair. It's not fair because your non-illegal alien criminal defendant just gets tried and could go to jail, right? But your illegal alien criminal defendant, well, he could get tried and go to jail and be deported. So that's not fair. What do you mean it's
Good.
not fair?
Good.
That's super rights right there. You're giving the illegal alien more rights than you are just the American criminal defendant. I mean, it's permeated every level of our society where, everyone wants to redescribe who, or not redescribe, but change who the victim is.
Right.
Who's the victim here?
Absolutely.
The actual victim that got murdered or raped or shot, or the one that did the murdering, raping, or shooting? Well, in Steve Descano's Fairfax County, it's the latter.
It's
Yeah.
so messed up. And I mean, we're seeing this in so many blue cities and states across the country. It's prosecutors refusing to prosecute criminals and lock them up. And we're also seeing state and local law enforcement either refuse to work with federal immigration authorities or be blocked by these blue
Right.
states.
Right. Yeah, it's really crazy. Because again, there was once this understanding amongst law enforcement. And to be clear and to be fair, federal law enforcement, when it comes to immigration, wasn't prepared and equipped the way that it is today. So, in practice, just because the numbers historically don't match to where they are today and where they're going to be tomorrow and the next day, doesn't mean that there wasn't this understanding. And the understanding was we're going to help each other out. We're going to support each other. And if there is an illegal alien who comes into our custody, we're going to call at the time, the Legacy INS. And we're going to say, hey, we've got a guy here who's appears to be illegal. What do you think? Can you help us out? Can you help us identify this person and figure out who they are? Today, of course, that's an issue that's principally handled by ICE, a little bit by CBP, all under the umbrella of DHS. And you have jurisdictions across this country, like Maryland, for example, that are passing legislation saying not only can you not honor ICE detainers, which is a crazy concept. I mean, these are people charged with criminal offenses. So not only can you not hold them for long enough for ICE to just come pick them up, and not only can you not participate in the 287G program, which is a partnership between the federal and the state governments or local governments, but also you cannot even talk to ICE. You can't even pick up the phone and call DHS and ask a question. And they pass these laws and they pat themselves on the back and they say, oh, this is great. We're protecting our immigrant community. We're making sure that they are not going to be discriminated against. But there's multiple problems, so many problems. Number one, of course, you're prioritizing the needs and rights of illegal aliens above citizens, super rights, right? And then the other problem for a lot of folks, surprise, surprise, shocker, shocker, there's a federal law on point. There's two, actually, 8 U.S.C. 1373, 8 U.S.C. 1644, that both say that no one can restrict information sharing between the feds, states, and locals regarding the citizenship or immigration status of any person in the United States. So when you have these state legislatures, but they're going out of their way. I don't think that they didn't know about that law. If they didn't, then maybe they went to the J. Jones Quality Learning Center School of Law. But assuming that they did know, they were willing to do it because they're outcome oriented. Their outcome, ends justify the means all the time with their approach. And you have to look at the things that they're doing. And what is it that they're doing? They're consistently, every time, prioritizing the needs of illegal aliens and criminals above law-abiding citizens. And when you get to that place in a society, when you get to that place in a country, you are on the edge of societal destruction. When people, the very citizens who are the taxpayers, who are the families, the moms and dads, the kids, everybody in between, the business leaders who form the backbone of a community, when you subjugate their rights to the criminals and the illegal aliens, then you're really just treading on very thin ice. You're getting to a point where you're about to fall into the icy water.
So explain this psychology to me, because the victims, what about the victims? What about the victims' families? Look at what happened at the State of the Union when the president talked about the victims, when he had like family members that he honored, not one Democrat stood up. Like, how could you not recognize that this person's daughter was raped and murdered? Like, where is your empathy? Where is like the human element that it's not just super rights, which is appalling in and of itself, but you don't care about the person that was raped or murdered or the surviving relatives, like literally what is happening with our civil society. And you see, again, in State of the Union, President Trump's like, hello, look at these people. Like, where's your passion? And he said, they won't even stand up. And they proudly don't stand up. Like,
Right. Like, where's
what
your
is that all about?
humanity? Yeah, where's the humanity?
Yeah, look, I think this probably warrants another show in and of itself about that very issue. I mean, President Trump led on this issue with Mike Collins from my home state of Georgia with the Laken Riley Act at the start of the administration, named for Laken Riley, of course, who was murdered near the University of Georgia by an illegal alien. You would think that someone who claims to support individual rights, someone who claims to value this country, someone who claims to have any kind of moral code whatsoever would want to stand up for someone like Laken Riley, who would want to lead and say, you know what? Like, we might have our differences on tax policy. We might have our differences on social safety net issues. We might have our differences on a lot of things. But like, where is the common decency that you are not willing to stand up for your fellow citizen who gets murdered by someone who had no right to be here? I mean, in my mind, that's absolutely insane. And it hasn't been until this administration that we've seen anyone willing to take on the issue seriously and to reach out to victims and to stand up for the victims' rights and to let their voices be heard. This White House has actually done a really, really good job of highlighting the stories of these families who are going through heart-wrenching circumstances, things that none of us could ever imagine.
Ever.
But that, you know, again, that no one else is doing on the other side. No, they don't, because they don't care.
They don't care.
They don't care.
And Descano's going to be sitting like at the same table with the mother of the woman who was murdered at the bus stop in Fairfax County. Let's see what happens.
You know, who would have thought in the fall of 2022 that we'd be sitting here, you know, almost 4 years later, looking at Democrats and saying they literally have one guy that has some moral conscience, right? Like one guy, and his name's John Fetterman. Now, he votes with Democrats like 95% of the time. I disagree with almost all of his policies, but at least that guy has the courage to just say what's right. Right. And not fall into this
common sense
insanity that his party has. And, you know, you don't have to agree with him on everything. And he, I believe, voted for the Laken Riley Act, did he not?
Yeah. Look, he did, as I recall, the vote outcome. He was one who was willing to vote for it. Other senators were shamed into voting for it at the last moment, but he was one on other issues as well, who's at least willing to say the right thing and to criticize honestly from just a first principles perspective of right and wrong issues. So we got a lot here today that we've discussed, that we've covered. We've gone from one thing to the other, and interwoven through all of it has been a little bit about our organization, about America First Legal. I would encourage folks at home, if you are not familiar with some of these cases or with some of these issues that we've been discussing, if you go to our website, aflegal.org, I guarantee you're going to find information about a case, a series of cases, a policy issue, something that matters to you, because we are fighting for you and for all of our clients who are just trying to live their lives in this country and to make it a better place for their families the way that we have all experienced for ourselves in our own lifetimes. So next week, we'll be back for another episode. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. We're going to have all kinds of fun, all kinds of more discussion about pressing issues in the legal area. If you have feedback, tips, things that you want to give us about this show, about future episodes, topics, potential guests, just feel free to shoot us a note at thearena@aflegal.org. We're done for today, so have a great week, and we will talk to you next time.